you're doing to Picard. It's how you're hoping to find meaning in your life.
Blasphemy.
Before I get into it, if you like Star Trek Picard Season 2 and thought the scene where Q says goodbye to his old friend was touching, that's fine. That's great even. Don't let this take away from that. This is my analysis of the scene, but regardless of what I say and what every frame of pause likes to think, art is subjective ultimately. So you do you. But for me, and according to science, there are definitive reasons why most people do not like what we see. In order to better understand it, let's compare Q's goodbye to that of TNG's Lower Decks, the specific episode, not the series. In that episode, we visit 4 different lower-ranking officers, and throughout the story, they are given different challenges and have to help the main cast with an unknown mission. If you haven't seen it, it leads to this very touching ending.
To all Starfleet personnel, this is the captain. It is my sad duty to inform you that a member of the crew, Ensign Sito Jaxa, has been lost in the line of duty. She was the finest example of a Starfleet officer, and a young woman of remarkable courage and strength of character.
Now let's compare that to the ending we see between Q and Picard. If you haven't seen it, it also can be pretty heart-wrenching.
Farewell, mon capitaine. It's time for me to go.
But not alone. Isn't that the point of all this?
Now this scene in and of itself is touching, it's great, it's everything you want in a goodbye. You have 2 seasoned actors, a lesson is learned, someone dies with an old friend who they thought might be an enemy. But the problem is that it's not earned in Picard, where it is in the Next Generation. It ultimately comes down to the type of writing that we see in the Disco or Kurtzman era. I'm not sure if this is modern writing or just the style that Kurtzman likes, but every series, with the possible exception of Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds, has to have an ungodly amount of storylines and arcs. There are a ton of things going on. Because of this, every specific plot, including the main one, has to take a back seat and isn't given time to breathe. Not only that, but they all have to have some kind of conclusion, some kind of ending, which means that none of them are really satisfactory. We can't really build up to the empowering moment that we see in Lower Decks. One of the main themes of this is Q saying goodbye to his friend Picard. So let's see how much time the character has in this entire series. Of the 10 episodes, he appears 8 times. Of those 8 appearances, 7 of them is new footage and not a flashback. Of those 7 episodes, there's not really a lot there. In the episode Stargazer, he appears for roughly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. In Penance, he is there for 7 minutes 15 seconds. In Assimilation, he appears for a whopping 47 seconds. He is in Watcher, but he's only there for 1 minute and 6 seconds. In Fly Me to the Moon, he's there for about 3 minutes and 43 seconds. In Mercy, we have him on for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and in Farewell, Q's there for a whopping 8 minutes and 57 seconds. So Q has roughly actual new footage where he's involved in the plot for an entirety of, give or take, 29 minutes and 36 seconds. That's out of 8.5 hours. Or 17% of the show. And of the footage that we have of him, he is either being heavily enigmatic or focused on Picard. In fact, in only 2 of those episodes does he focus on Picard, which accounts for 15 minutes. And of those 15 minutes, only 5 is the reveal and saying goodbye. That's roughly 5% of Q's showtime. So of the 30 minutes, 5% of it actually focuses on the main theme. And during all of this, we have so much more going on. We have issues with the Borg Queen, time changing, issues between Raffi and Seven, a love story between Picard and Laris, Rios deciding his new fate, the dying of Elnor, constantly being told how bad ICE and police are. If we look at Star Trek Picard Season 2 as a standalone series with no outer content, then the goodbye is very shallow. Now, one might try to argue that we have to include all of Star Trek for it to make some semblance of sense. And first off, if your content is so bad you have to watch 300 to 500 hours of content beforehand to understand it, that's a problem in and of itself, but we won't even get into that. And the sad fact is not even that's true. You see, the story when it comes to Q and Picard isn't cohesive. It wasn't built for that. When he was in TNG, DS9, and Voyager, it was never thought of that he'd be saying goodbye to Picard. Sure, you establish them as frenemies, but it doesn't lead to his demise. That was, quite obviously, added at the end, and that's why it doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's compare that to Lower Decks. Again, the episode, not the series. In the Lower Decks episode, the character that is lost is Ensign Sito. She's given 22 minutes and 38 seconds out of roughly 40 minutes. Not only that, but the entire time with her on screen and off screen serves only 3 points. 1. Either she or her friend will be getting a promotion, and she's very supportive of him getting it. 2. A mystery that the Lower Deck crew are aware of but can't figure out. And 3. Sito's redemption arc where she is forgiven for her past sins from another episode and ultimately makes a sacrifice, and how her loss impacts everyone else. In this episode, we see the bond with her friends, we go through the trials and tribulations, and she rises to the occasion. The entire story, whether she's on screen or not, is geared towards knowing and understanding who she is, how she overcomes her past, how people look up to her, how people care for her, and then they figure out the mystery. When she rises to the occasion and is killed, not only do the other characters feel it, but we do, because we got to know her. We feel like we've lost a friend. This is not done with Q in the Star Trek Picard series, and there isn't enough background for us to fill it here either. But to quote Red Letter Media, God help me, it could have been earned. They could have taken enough time to build up Q, to build up how he is dying and how that impacts him and how he wants to help Picard so that he didn't have to die alone. They just didn't do that. Now, there may be those that argue that you can't do that in an 8-hour story, that it's too much time. First, you're wrong. You can make any story, and you can make it as long as you want if you do it well. But let's assume that you can't. If you can't do that kind of story in 8 hours, then don't do that story. Or do it in less time. Don't add 600 other things. Behind the scenes, they try to say that this is a character piece. It's about Picard and how he became who he became, but that's not true. It's an action story that has back elements that impact and possibly change the character, but because we don't have enough time to become invested, it doesn't do a lot. Again, if you liked what happened between Picard and Q, that's fine. I'm not even saying that Season 2 of Star Trek Picard is bad. I'm just saying that this scene doesn't really mean a lot, and that's a shame because it could have. But these are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.